the pilot episode of Thanks for Trying, the podcast where we look at films that may have missed their mark, but still have had effort put into them. Films that blur the line between bad and good. I'm your host, Oscar, and in this episode we'll be looking at the 2013 film Fateful Findings, which was directed by Neil Breen. Before we get into it, disclaimer, I don't want to bash Neil Breen. I'm not here to have a go at him or anything, or make fun of him personally. He'd made 5 feature films independent on his own money. I think that's admirable, no matter what way, no matter the quality. I think to have that and put that effort into it, it's a lot. So I'm not bashing him. I'm just going through the film and then just pointing out stuff which didn't work, stuff that does work, maybe pointers for stuff in the future. So yeah, just want to get over that. Okay, I'll be doing a synopsis of the film. That's going to be the main part of the film, the episode. I've got a film viewing notes section here, where I've gone through the plot and then just made notes about the plot as I go. I watched this film on Saturday, filming this on a Tuesday, so still fairly fresh. Still fairly fresh. I have the film up on my phone because I bought it. Just want to say I'm supporting Neil Breen. I bought it on Amazon for £8. I think you can get Fateful Findings and Twisted Pair, which is his most recent one, which was 2018. And he's got a 6th one coming up called Cade Tortured Crossing. But yes, quickly. Also, still the intro, sorry. Neil Breen, he was an architect before making films. Again, he didn't go to film school. I watched a few interviews with him in it, just to get a general idea of him and his process. So he was an architect. Again, so he didn't go to film school, as I've said previously, which again I respect. Okay, making 5 independent films, feature-length ones, and he does the whole process from he writes the scripts, he directs, he edits, he does I think the special effects for it as well. He acts in them. I think I said that. So yes, but that does cause a few issues, I think, with the film itself. If you're doing everything yourself, I get it, because I mean I've made a few short films, and even making a short film by yourself is difficult. I mean, there's a lot to go into it. Storyboards, call sheets, shooting scripts, planning the locations, props, actors, editing, filming. It took like 6 days just to film my film, and mine is 7 minutes. I think Neil Breen does full 10-hour, 20-day shoots for his films. So yes, right. Let's get into the synopsis of the film. It's about 1 hour and 40. I don't know how long this podcast will be. It might be long, might be short, who knows. So let's just get into it. Okay, so the film starts in a storage facility, and then there's like a sort of spooky shots of them going around the storage facility, twisting and weaving, and they get to a gold book on a pedestal, and then there's glitter being sprinkled on it. I don't know what that means. The book comes up again, but I don't know why it's in a storage facility at the start. Maybe that's where they all gathered for their first shooting day, and then they're like, oh, let's just film this. But I don't know. I mean, I think, giving credit to Neil Breen here, I think it foreshadows, spoilers by the way, I think it foreshadows what happens later on in the film. I don't know. I think it does. I could be wrong. But I'm giving Neil Breen the credit there. So then we cut to two kids. They are running around the forest, and there's a creepy deer skull which looks at them. I think it's a deer. No, it's a ram or something. Goat. Which follows them. And then they find a big tree, and underneath that tree is a magical mushroom which they open up. And then in that mushroom you find a box. You find a box. In that box is a black cube, and there's more glitter and stuff. Okay. All good so far, kind of. And then that's a flashback. So, I know, before that, they then switch to the girl leaving for the airport, and they're in a big rush for some, they're in a big rush for the airport, but then they proceed to drive off really slowly with the girl waving out to the boy in the window, and then there's a voiceover of Neil Breen, and he says, oh, that's the last I saw of her. So the start of the film was a flashback, and then we cut to present day, where Neil Breen's character, Dylan, it's about the only time I remembered like a first name of a character in a film, because I rarely do, but here we are. He's on his phone to his wife, and he crosses the street, he jaywalks, because it's in America, I think, here it is, but yeah. So he jaywalks, he goes across the road, and he's talking to his wife, so he doesn't see the Rolls Royce, which runs him over. There's a weird shot of like the blood flowing down the Rolls Royce grille, because it's an old one. It's like a silver shadow or something. So it's blood flowing down what they call it? It's the grille, but it's like the anyway. And then there's some amazing acting from like insert shots of characters saying, oh, we saw it. It was the Rolls Royce that hit him. It's like, yes, I think we can tell that because there's like half his blood on the Rolls Royce. And then there's a lady in the car who gets out, but you only see her legs. And then there's like a weird like a puff of smoke, which gives Dylan a magical box. I want to point out the effects for the smoke. I don't know if he couldn't find a longer effect, because it sort of spirals out and then it starts to fade and then it just disappears. It doesn't like fade, but it just fades and then just goes. I don't know if he could find a longer one, but he uses that quite a lot, that same effect. And then the ambulance arrives, the doctors put in the sort of oxygen mask on the wrong way on him, and they wheel him into the ambulance, and then they wheel him to the hospital. And then it's a really weird hospital room, because he's got like a facial injury, and they put bandages over his face, of half his face, and then put an oxygen mask over the bandages, and then they put like a IV tube or like an oxygen tube into the bandages, but they don't go anywhere. It's very confusing. And there's like 5 oxygen tanks in there, and then they don't have any oxygen in them. And I think it's in the background, so it's not noticeable, but then they do a panning shot of all the pressure gauges, so it's like, well, there's no oxygen in them. It would have been fine if they just left that out, but I think they were trying to just pad for time, so yes. And then a neurosurgeon comes in, and then she gives a diagnosis through checking his pulse, must be a really good doctor if she can do that. I don't know how that's possible. Who knows? Anyway. So in the hospital, Dylan is... Oh, we're also introduced to Dylan's best friend, Jim, and her wife, his wife. Yes, in that scene. In the hospital, Dylan is awakened from his coma by the magical powers of the black cube in his hand. Again, there's like wind, and then the smoke comes in, and that gives him the black cube, and then he awakes. And he walks home still in his hospital gown. I don't know how no one saw him in the hospital or on the way home, because he walked home just in the gown. I don't know how that's possible, but there we go. He gets home, he has a shower, really weird. His wife joins him in the shower, and there's like a really weird scene of them standing in the shower awkwardly, and there's just loads of blood running from his bandages. There's a weird theme of blood in this film. Yeah. So he's just home from the hospital now. They don't like discharge him or anything. The wife phones them up and says, "Oh, he's fine." And they're like, "Alright then, that's fine. He's had a facial injury and was in a coma literally like 3 hours ago, but he's fine now." There we are. He's an author. Yeah, that's his job, I think, and he's got a master's degree in computer science. So he's already written a book. He's in the process of writing a second one. Yes. And and in his office, there's about 7 laptops. And they're all off. He doesn't use them. He does, but they're all off. and he breaks a lot of laptops in this film. I don't know where I think all the budget went on to laptops, second-hand laptops from pawn shops. And there's about 7 of the same book, which I think was his old book he published, but he's reading from it later on in the film, and like making notes from his own book. I think there's a lot of effort, I think, put into production design, which was done by Neil Breen as well, because he did. I think his name shows up in the credits. It's just all credits of just him, just Neil Breen. It's Neil Breen. So yes, but he yeah, they did put effort into the just making everything look like a hospital or an office, but it's like exaggerated. so it feels like it's like if you have a dream and you dream of a place, but for some of the features of that place are exaggerated. For like, I have dreams of my house, but it's like bigger, or there's like elongated corridors and stuff. It feels like that, but there's just loads of laptops, like he's duplicated laptops in his dream or something, or he's clicked the wrong spawn button in Gmod or something. Tangent, I've gotten to laptops. The dialogue, we need to talk about the dialogue quickly. It's not good. It feels like they're reading from a script, which they are, but it's like someone's got cue cards up in the back holding the lines up, and it feels very stilted, and there's like no smooth transitions between dialogue. Someone starts, there's a bit of dialogue, there's too long of a pause, and then someone says the next bit of dialogue, and the music doesn't help. It sounds a bit like Oblivion NPC dialogue, which it doesn't help the case. Dialogue is hard. Writing dialogue is hard, and especially conversations between people. But I think that's where the thing comes in, where it's like Neil Breen did everything himself, and I think in some parts it would have benefited from him getting someone else in to help him, especially with the dialogue, maybe just to give pointers and stuff, because I think there is a good film in here, but the way it was executed, I think there could have been a lot more effort put into stuff. We'll get on to more of that later. So he's in his office working. Okay, so he's in his office working, and he has a weird vision, like the black cube gives him a weird vision, and of him standing or crouching on a floor of bin bags. At this point I was very confused, because he's like, oh, I've got a big headache, and I think it's this scene, and he sort of falls over, he leans on his desk, and then he tries to drink his coffee, and it all floods over his laptop and everything, and then he gets a vision of him crouching on a floor of bin bags. I think his visions in the film, he has a few, I think they're meant to be inside the cube, because it's like, I don't know, it's like a version of him in the cube or something. But yeah, I think the visions are him in the cube, and all very weird. So then, if some of these transitions from scene to scene feel a bit stilted, it could be my writing and my synopsis, but a lot of them are just, that happens, and then there's a completely different scene which has no bearing on the previous one, just cutting, but that would be okay if it cuts to like a logical starting point in the next scene, but it doesn't. It usually cuts to like halfway into a conversation, and it's like, this would have been better if we'd got the first part, but we haven't, so we're left trying to catch up and not listening to what's going on, because we're just confused as to what the cut was. We'll get onto that with some of the editing. I want to talk about quickly later on about sort of principles of editing and stuff, because I think a lot of them were missed in this. So anyway, it cuts to Dylan's best friend Jim in his garage, and he's got a Ferrari Testarossa. Makes him the best character. Awesome, really like it. In the film, he's sort of portrayed as a drunk, and he's always sort of taking the mick out of everyone, and he's sort of been, especially to his wife, there's some conflict with that later. I'll get to that when I get to it, because I have some points to make about it. So there's that. I think in this scene, if I'm correct, she sort of comes in and then says, "Oh, why are you're always in here with your car?" I'm like, yeah, lots of Ferrari Testarossa, but you're not out here with me and your daughter. I think that's in this scene. So then again, there's random sort of smash jump cut between scenes. To Dylan again. He's in his office again. I think I'm going to say this now. I think the way they filmed it is they filmed. This is the right way to film things as well. Just want to point that out. They filmed all of the office scenes, and then they filmed sort of everything else in sort of in blocks and stuff, so you don't have to keep going back and forth, which is the right way to film. But then they sort of randomly just sort of cut between each scene like that, and then there's no real reason for the scenes happening in disorder. I think they can take stuff out, move stuff around, because a scene happens, it cuts to Dylan in his office talking about stuff, cuts to a different scene, and then it cuts to the same sort of setup of him in his office talking about stuff, and a lot of the time he's in the same shirt, so it's like, it's quite obvious that you're just filming it and then cutting. Again, it's how you do it, just to save time, but I think continuity-wise you need to change stuff up and maybe just not have so many, or show more of his office, not have it from the same angle all the time. It's quite hard to describe, but I think if you watch the film you'll get what I mean. So it cuts to him in his office. There's a sort of, I think there's a monologue of him. He's now hacking into government websites to unearth national and international corruption. I don't know where that came from. They say he's got a degree in computer science. Yeah, but they don't show him why he's hacking into government websites. There's no incident for him to then want to be hacking into stuff, because he gets hit by a car, gets given a magical cube, and then decides to hack. It's like that. Those two don't correlate. There needs to be some more of an incident in between there. Maybe I don't know. He's affected by corruption or something, because his wife works. I think both. I think Jim's and his wife work in the bank, so there maybe they're affected by corruption in the bank or something, because it happens sort of later on, and then that persuades him to hack into stuff, but he is just magically hacking into stuff. There's no real solid reason for him to do that. And his wife has now become addicted to Dylan's pain medication. There's a scene earlier where he throws away his medication because he doesn't want it, but his wife gets it from the toilet. The film has tackled very difficult subjects like this, like addiction and suicide and stuff. They are difficult subjects to tackle, and it takes. There's a right way of approaching it, and I don't know. You have to know what you're doing, I think, to tackle these sorts of subjects, and I think they have to be done in a sort of sensitive way, which they are kind of done, but the rest of the film just doesn't make these subjects good. Like, it's very hard to describe. It just feels a bit weird watching it. And then this sort of conflict is introduced way too soon. And a lot of them are introduced way too soon, and then some of them are introduced really far into the film where they don't really have enough time to be resolved or built up. And there's no build up for these, or very minimal build up for these conflicts. They have a few scenes, and all of a sudden it's a massive problem. And then again, because here's an example. Later they randomly introduce sort of a storyline where Jim's daughter is attracted to Dylan. It's very weird. There's no real build up. I think there was meant to be, because there's like a barbecue scene. We'll get into that actually, but yeah, it's weird. Okay, where are we? Oh yeah, and again, scenes just seem to be repeated, but just in a slightly different way. It's probably to sort of bulk up the time to get it to a feature length. Then Dylan reveals to his wife that he's not been writing a second book, but has been hacking into government facilities. Even though he'd already told her that. He told her that 10 minutes ago in the first time he that's right, it wasn't a monologue. The first time it was, I think they're in the office. No, it's him talking to his wife about, I think, her addiction to pain medication, and then he's like, oh, I'm not writing a second book. I'm actually hacking into government secrets. And then he says that again later on. I think it's in the office or in the living room, I don't know, but he says it again, because in the first time the wife doesn't react, and then the second time she does, so I don't get, he says it again 10 minutes later, and then she reacts, but why didn't she react the first time? Why was that necessary the first time? They could have left that out or left this one out. They don't need both of them in there. It's very weird. So then they all have a barbecue together. This is Dylan, his wife, Jim, his wife, the daughter, Jim's daughter, and then they invite the scientist who has a fiance. Not the scientist. They invite the doctor. I'm pretty sure it's the same one who diagnosed. Yeah, it is. It's the same one who diagnosed him just by checking his pulse. I will get onto a very weird thing in a minute. They invite all of them over. So it turns out that Dylan's best friend from childhood is Leia, the doctor, and she's like, oh, I didn't realise it was you in the hospital because you had bandages over half your face, and I didn't think to check the name on the chart. You're a doctor, that is your... If you don't know who you're treating, if you don't know the name of the person you're treating, like, there's probably stuff on the chart that you need to know anyway, and you would look at the name. Malpractice there, just saying, I think. So, I don't know, it's very weird, but it seems like a line just to explain why she didn't know, just and then they can get this big reveal in later. So, that's all good, and then they start talking and stuff and get friendly, and then Dylan's wife gets a bit jealous of it, and then Jim is drunk again, and then he advances on Dylan's wife, who rejects him, and then it then cuts to, I think I'm missing stuff out here, there's a lot of stuff I have missed out because it's not necessary. It then cuts to Jim in the garage, working on his car. Jim's wife comes in, she gets annoyed at him, it's a big row. She goes to the bedroom, she gets a gun out, and then comes in and then shoots him, and he dies. And then at this point, Dylan is coming over, he's come over to the house. I don't know why he's there, he's just there conveniently. And then the daughter she finds him, and then the wife is like, oh no, you can't go in there, and then they sort of cover it up as if it was a suicide. And then Dylan comes in, and then I think this is the main scene, the definitive scene when people talk about this film. If you watch it, you'll know it. Where he finds Jim, his lifelong best friend, dead. And then he goes over, and then he's like, call an ambulance, and then he lifts him up, he's on the floor and he sort of gets him up on his lap. And then the acting, it's meant to be a sad scene, but it's not. Because he's like, oh, I can't believe you committed suicide, I can't believe it. And that, just what I just said then was probably better acting, and then that scene, it's not good, and it takes away from the scene. It's the scene everyone thinks of when they think of this film. And I think there's meant to be a bit of a symbolism between sort of the blood, because there's a lot of blood again. Symbolism between that and the colour of the car. I don't know. I'm cutting out some filler here. And then Dylan and the Doctor start to form a relationship again. They go to the same sort of forest that they did in the first, when they were a child. And then Dylan's wife overdoses on painkillers. There's a lot of this in this film. It's really, I don't think it's entirely necessary, a lot of them. And then now, because I'm going to talk about sort of the principles of editing. Okay, they've sort of gone out the window in this film with some of the weird jump cuts, some of the weird there's a lack of sort of spatial continuity or continuity in the shots and the editing. Because when you're editing, an edit needs to be there for a purpose that you're cutting on. It needs to be emotional. There needs to be some purpose for it, whether it's emotional or sort of on action. If you're cutting on action with like the momentum, there needs to be, you need to sort of set up so the audience knows where the people are in the scene and stick to that spatial continuity when you're editing, like the 180-degree rule, shot, reverse shot, all of that needs to be adhered to. You can't then just change it randomly, and there needs to be a flow when you're editing, so there needs to be emotion and reasoning behind your cuts and your edits, which there really isn't much of in here, because there's a scene of Dylan and Leia, the Doctor, walking through a park, and then it cuts to a static shot of them talking. There's no momentum carried on. That you don't sort of see them walking, cut to a blank shot, and then have them walk on to scene, and then talk. It just walking, cut to static of them just standing there, and it's like, woof. And also there's a lot of dead space. I briefly mentioned it earlier. A lot of dead space in the editing, so there's a lot of pauses between the start of the scene and someone speaking. There's a lot of space between someone talking, long pause, and then the next person says their dialogue, and then long pause, end of scene, long pause, start of scene. It's probably to pad out the episode, but at the film, but it's like you'll get a lot more flow and emotion and get a good sense of the pacing as well if you just condense it, cut out the dead space, because what you don't want is someone walking off screen and then there's a big, well, depending on what you're doing, but usually if you have someone walking off screen, you sort of wait to the last frame of them on screen and then you cut. You don't just sort of leave 2 seconds of random dead space at the end. But they've sort of, and it's Neil Breen again editing, I think with someone else. He would benefit from having someone else helping him or editing it for him, and I get that it's expensive to hire editors, and on a low sort of an independent budget film, that makes sense. And also editing is hard. It's very hard for one person to edit an entire film and make it look good and polished in what you can, but it take a lot of time. And again, when I'm filming when I was editing my short films, I am editing my short films and stuff, there's a lot of effort in just sort of, I think there's it's like, I don't know, that's script writing, but you take a lot of time for like 1 minute, and there's a lot of thought that goes into, should be a lot of thought that goes into the edits and stuff, but there's not really much of that in here, which is a shame, because I think there is a good film in here if you cut out a lot of filler and maybe, I don't know, there are ways to improve it. I did find it enjoyable. I didn't find it unenjoyable to watch, let's just say that. I think it is entertaining, maybe for the wrong reasons, and maybe for some of the right reasons. I just wanted to go into that on the more technical aspect, just to highlight some things you may not be aware of. If you are, then you might agree with me, you might not. So then he tells the doctor, Leia, that he hasn't been working on a second book, but has been hacking into secret government secrets. He's told us for the 4th time now that, because he told us in a monologue to the audience. He then told it to the wife, and he told it to the wife again, and now he's telling it to the doctor. We don't need to be told 4 times the same thing. It's very exposition heavy, the film. It's probably to sort of emphasise the importance of what he's doing. But there are other ways of showing that, not just him explicitly telling someone or just us that he's doing it, because they're not showing him doing it. I think if they'd added a scene of him actually maybe breaking into somewhere, or actually like showing the screen of what he's hacking, because they show him hacking in air quotes, but it's not, it's just him pressing a few buttons on a laptop with the screen facing away from us, so we can't see that it's just a black screen. But yeah, I think if they put maybe some of the budget into filming a scene where he's actually hacking into it, and then we wouldn't get repeats of him saying the same thing. The doctor is then kidnapped by the government, I think, who drops a note just telling him what to do. Like, I'm sure if he's a government agent, he'll probably be trained to know and not have to have a little post-it note. I don't know, but he's dropped it conveniently for Dylan to find. When he gets to the house and he's on the phone to Leia, I think, but always leaving a voice message. Is it, oh, I've looked around the house, you're not there. Oh wait, your bag's here. You stepped over, I don't know how you can see it, but and he finds a note. And he goes to find her. He then finds her in a trailer in a car park. Now I think this is what the start of the film's foreshadowing, because in the car park I think it's a storage facility as well, and I think the start of the film in the storage facility is meant to foreshadow this scene. I don't know, I could be giving him too much credit here, but I think that's what that's meant to mean. And it's just a random trailer in the middle of a car park with the agent still in his kidnapping get-up, with like the black hoodie and sunglasses, with the hood up and everything. So you probably would have changed, but you know, he goes there, he interrogates him, and then he goes, he's like, oh, the door's locked into the trailer, how do I get in? He just phases through the door. Okay, alright, it's magical powers, but they don't really show his magical powers up until this point where he just phases through the door. And then he phases out the door, and then I'm not cutting anything out here, it just randomly cuts from him phasing through doors to the daughter, Jim's daughter, in their house, in Dylan's house, just revealing that her mum shot Jim. I don't know. It's very. I think it's because it's sort of nearing the end of the film, so they have to wrap stuff up. But he's like, oh, okay. And they don't really do anything. That's not really come up again. That doesn't really come up again. They don't really get like revenge or sort of go to the police about it. That just sort of ends that plot line. And then there's another weird jump cut of him in bed. He's in bed. There's then some weird stuff happens. And there's lots of paintings shaking and stuff. Then he gets I think a vision of him again in the bin bag place. And then he just goes to the desert to confront some random entities that have just been appearing throughout the film. I've not brought them up because they're not really relevant, but they've just sort of been walking through his house at night and stuff. That's sort of it. I mean, I think the entities are from the Black Cube. It doesn't really show or anything. It's not explained. He goes to the desert and he's like, oh, do I need to be afraid of you? That just happens. And then doesn't really come up again. And then the big reveal of his hacking data is him making a speech in front of a green screen and some stock footage. He reveals that he's been into hacking into secrets for the 5th time, this time to non-existent journalists, because it just shows shots of cameras, not actually people. And then he says he's been hacking into banks and stuff and corruption. He says at the start of the film that he's like, oh, international and national. I think it's just national. Anyway. And then some of the people he exposes just confess. They just confess the crime. I don't know why they went to that place, but they just confess to their crime on the spot. And then there's really weird scenes of them confessing, and then just like shooting themselves in front of everyone. And then Neil Breen just sounds like, yeah, yep, there we go. And the next person, and they say what they've done, and then one of them hangs himself, and it's like, oh, it's really weird. And then again, it's just Dylan standing there like, yeah, yep, there we go. Not fazed by it. No one's fazed by that for some reason. It's really weird. Dylan, he saved the world apparently. I think during his speech, someone just tries to assassinate him, but then they're shot from somewhere. But it's not shown. That literally it's not shown where he's shot from or anything. It's just him coming out of a bush, and then he just gets shot. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's... Oh, I was very confused by this point. I'm sure you are. And yes, that is pretty much the end now. And then it just ends with Dylan and Leia just walking across the field. And then that's the end of the film. Yes, I mean, I don't really know what to say other than that. It's very weird. I've gone through all the points. There's a weird thing in the end credits. A message of him saying that any company listed in the credits with an N or B in the name is fictitious and is made up by Neil Breen. I don't know why that they have to put that message in there, or why they have to make up fictitious companies. Maybe it's something to do with film festivals or making it a feature film. Maybe they have to have a certain number of companies or something. I'm not sure. It's all very weird. And then, yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to add apart from Neil Breen himself. He's got a 6th film coming up. Cade and the Tortured Crossing. He's completed it last year, I think. He's waiting for film festivals to get him back. I'll probably cover that. I'm probably going to cover if this podcast. I want to clarify. This is for college assignment, but and I only have to do one episode. But because I enjoyed this, if this gets popular or anything, I might just carry on, because I have a few other episodes to plan out, like The Room and Birdemic, and there's lots of films to cover that sort of fit into the same genre. So I could do some more of Neil Breen's films. He's got Double Down, that was his first film, I think, in 2007. I Am Here Now in 2009. Fateful Findings, this one, 2013, and then Twisted Pair in 2018. When I was doing some research for this film, I found a Neil Breen 5-film retrospective of him just going through his creative process in making the films. It is 5 hours and 40 minutes. How is it that long? I do not know. But yes, thanks for listening. It's been good. I've enjoyed this. I will say... No, I won't. I'm just going to end it. Bye. You have unlocked the secret ending. Thanks for playing through the game and not shooting any NPCs. You have unlocked the secret ending. Here are some bloopers and bonus bits of me fighting with a washing machine. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of Thanks for Trying. Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of Thanks for Trying, the podcast where we look at films that may have missed their mark. What? There was just a man hosing the pavement outside. I think he's seen him recording a podcast and has just decided to hose the pavement for some reason. Cool. Great. I'm going to use this as my intro. Jesus. Or this one. What do you think, Kevin McLeod? Hello, you have unlocked the... Why is there a car alarm going off? There's a man hosing the pavement, and there's a car alarm going off, and there's a washing machine going on, and this is not a good place to record a podcast. Oh, stop now. Holy moly. I came up here because it's quiet, but apparently not. They all got wind of me recording a podcast today, and they decided just to set up